this is Megan.
And this is Mark.
Welcome to our 8th video of the Star Wars Land construction at Disneyland.
And we'll also talk about the area that needs to be modified to make room for Star Wars Land, such as the rerouting of the Disneyland Railroad, Rivers of America, and Big Thunder Trail.
Today is April 1st, 2017.
Located at the center of the picture, workers are attaching rebar to create a wall for this cylindrical structure. They're using tie wire to attach the rebar together. If we look over to our left, we can see that decking has been laid out on the newly added portion of the Battle Escape Show building. And the walkers are less visible now as the building continues to expand out. Notice that there's an open space where the floor decking hasn't been added. This will allow enough room for the tall AT-AT walkers. Now if we look over to the Critter Country entrance area, we can see that a second sidewall of the tunnel entrance has been made. The Disneyland Railroad will eventually travel above this wall. Looking through the trees at the cabin on Tom Sawyer Island, some more shingles have been added to the roof. We'll go on Big Thunder Mountain Railroad next to view the cabin from the other side. Peeking out of the cabin hole, we can see that a lot of shingles have been installed on this side as well. Alright, we're in Critter Country next to the fence, and sliding to the left, we can see that part of the path to Star Wars Land has been opened. Now we can see some of the detail of the path close up. Here's a good view of the top railing of the stone wall. And here's a light post. I like the pine cones at the top. That's a really nice touch. Here's a railing on the bridge, and if we pan up, we can see the amazing wood detail that started off as smooth metal. This is what it looked like back in February, and as you can see, a worker is adding a coating to it to make the metal look like wood. Now I'll dissolve the picture back to what it looks like today. That is quite a difference.
Today is April 4th, 2017.
At the Critter Country tunnel entrance, workers are setting up formwork to create the top of the tunnel entrance. The formwork consists of steel props, which is the vertical bracing, cross bracing, aluminum beams, and plywood. On top of the plywood is where the rebar will be added, and then, eventually, the concrete. Now if we look to the right of the cylindrical structure, rebar is being added adjacent to a concrete form. Here a worker is climbing the rebar. Notice that he attached a rebar hook to the rebar for fall protection. Another worker is climbing the rebar as well. He's signaling to a worker below that he's ready for a rebar. Next, the worker is using a tie wire to attach the vertical rebar to the horizontal rebar. Now if we look at the cylindrical structure that's being made, we can see that a concrete form is being lowered into position. This form will be part of the second layer of forms. Notice that rebar is between the two layers. Once all the forms are in place, concrete will be added between the two layers of forms to create the sidewall. Now if we focus our attention to the right a little bit, we can see that rebar is being laid out to create a wall footing. This worker is putting in a diagonal reinforcing bar between the two layers of the footing rebar. These two workers are installing rebar for another wall footing. The worker on the right put a magnetic level on the rebar. It is essential that the rebar that they're installing is lined up perfectly with the rebar above to make a footing that is correctly positioned. While this worker holds the rebar stationary, the worker on the left attaches a tie wire to securely fasten the two layers of rebar together. Now if we look back at the cylindrical structure, workers are adding aluminum beams to the top of the formwork. This formwork is a similar setup to what we saw at the Critter Country tunnel entrance. They're setting up to make a concrete slab at the top. Alright, so it appears that all the shingles are in place on the log cabin roof. Now we're on the street level looking at where the Millennium Falcon attraction will be. We can see concrete forms that are surrounding rebar. Notice that the forms are arranged in a circular pattern. And behind this form structure, he has a twin sister, another one with the identical circular pattern.
Today is April 10th, 2017.
Rebar is being installed for the top of the Critter Country tunnel entrance. Vertical rebar has been attached to the wall footings that we observed last time we were here. Here workers are attaching concrete forms to a wall footing to get it ready to add concrete. This worker is clearing out some of the debris between the rebar before the concrete is added. Over in the distance, stacks of lumber have been brought in. It's possible that this lumber will be used for the Disneyland Railroad, either for the bridges or possibly even some of it for the railroad ties. Workers are preparing a steel joist to be added to the Battle Escape Show building. And there it goes, it's being lifted. The main function of a joist is to provide direct support for decking, and this will help distribute the weight load on the deck and also put less stress on the structural frame, such as beams and columns. The joist is being lowered. Now they're guiding it into position. Alright, next we'll go down to the street level to get a different angle of the joist being installed. Here's another joist being lowered. Notice that two diagonal steel pieces are extending out of the body of the joist. These will be used for cross bridging, connecting this joist to an adjacent joist. We have a good angle of where this joist is going to be installed. This worker is guiding the end of the joist into the slit opening of the beam. These workers are attaching the steel pieces that are extending out from the joist to an adjacent joist. The worker at the end of the joist now welds it to the beam. Next, we'll look out of the cavern hole on Big Thunder Mountain Railroad. From here, we can see that workers are continuing to add mesh forms to Area 24. Now zooming into the right a little bit, we can see that a wood railing has been made for the bridge. Notice that another steel joist is being lowered into position for the battle escape. Next, we can see that the wall next to the tunnel entrance to Star Wars Land has been painted brown. It looks like a wood plank wall. Identical look to what we saw over at the tunnel entrance on Big Thunder Trail. Alright, we're now in Critter Country and we'll go ahead and peek through the fence. Here on the other side of the fence, we can see that a keel boat has been brought in. It looks like the same keel boat that was docked in front of Mike Fink's cabin before the construction began. This keel boat is called the Golly Whomper. The keel boats were based on the Walt Disney television shows, later made into movies, the Davy Crockett Keelboat Race, and the Davy Crockett and the River Pirates. Behind the keel boats, workers are putting shape to the rock structures. This Imagineer is using a concrete trowel to put shape to the rock structures. Here's another worker carving and putting shape to another rock structure. Next, an Imagineer is adding a colored pattern to the rocks. It is looking nice.
Today's April 14th, 2017.
First, we'll look at the cylindrical structure, or at least it used to look cylindrical. With all the formwork surrounding the structure, it's hard to see the actual shape of it now. But anyway, we can see that tube forms have been placed in position to increase the height of the columns. Notice the rebar at the top of the columns are extending out horizontally. More than likely, a flooring will be built at this level. Now to the right of the structure, concrete has been added to the wall footings. And if you look closely, you can see vertical rebar extending out of the footings to create the walls. At the top of the Battle Escape Show building, a second set of beams have been installed. Now if we look at the show building's basement, beams have been installed at the top middle portion. Now if we look at the building behind where the Millennium Falcon attraction will be, more structural framework has been installed and the sidewalls of the building are being added. We're in Critter Country and we'll go ahead and peek through the fence. Here we can see that part of the track for the Mark Twain riverboat and the sailing ship Columbia has been installed. If we look a little bit to the left, we can see a telehandler lifting a segment of the track, bringing the track to its location. The workers will need to modify it a little bit before the track is put upright. The worker is using a cutting torch to cut off a small portion of the track. This portion of the track will make contact with the flat metal top plate of the track foundation. Next, the workers will need to lift and rotate the track to its other side. The worker is cutting off a piece on this side as well. Now a lifting sling has been put around the track segment so it can be lifted by the telehandler. The track is now upright. Next, the track is welded to the foundation. Now looking over in this direction, a worker is welding two track segments together.
Today is April 23rd, 2017.
At the battle escape location, a lot of welded wire mesh has been brought in. And if you look closely at the top of the building, some more wire mesh has been laid out on top of the decking. Welded wire mesh is used to reinforce concrete, which gives the concrete structural strength. And in the long run, this helps minimize cracking in the concrete. Now if we focus our attention to the show building's basement, we can see that they are continuing to build the top middle portion. And floor decking has been laid out. However, the sides of the basement remain open. It is possible that they're keeping it open to put an elevator mechanism of some sort in place. Notice that the level above is remaining open, and possibly a third level as well. Next, we'll look to the right. Plywood is being added to the top of the horizontal beams of the formwork. After all the plywood is laid out, rebar will be installed and eventually a concrete slab. If we zoom out a little bit, we can see that more concrete forms have been put up. Located on the forms in the center, they're preparing to make openings between the walls. More than likely, these openings will be for doorways. Here's a good view of some more concrete forms that have been put up on top of the wall footings. Once again, we're on Big Thunder Trail, and we'll go ahead and peek over the fence. We can see that more trees have been brought in. Next, we'll go into Critter Country. The track for the Mark Twain and Columbia is coming along. We'll get a different angle so we can see a different portion of the track. We can see part of the original track coming through the fence screen. And right on the other side of the fence screen is the dam to keep the water from entering the construction area. Here's what it looked like back in March. We can see part of the original track. Now I'll dissolve the picture to what it looks like today. And as we can see, the new portion of the track is connected to the original track.
Today's April 28th, 2017.
Concrete forms are continuing to be added. They're also installing more rebar. Over here at this portion of the battle escape, rebar is being installed on the top and side of the plywood. Now we'll look over on the other side of the building. A worker is welding the steel decking to the structural beams of the building. Next, if we glance to the left a little bit, we can see that concrete has been added to the wire mesh. Also from this angle, we can see the formwork for the Millennium Falcon attraction. If you look closely, you can see the concrete that has been added between the layers of forms. It's hard to see, but if you look at the gray color at the top of the forms, you'll be able to see it. Here we are in Critter Country. Peeking over the fence, we can see that construction workers are assembling rock forms together. Now the forms are being welded. Next, they're putting more pieces together. And welding these forms as well. If we slide to the right a little bit, we can see a worker carving concrete to make a stone wall. To the right of this worker, there's a cluster of pipes that point in all different directions. It's possible they're going to be making a fallen tree. Here we have a good view of the column rocks that will be located at the edge of the water. And this type of rock formation is called columnar basalt. A worker is walking over to the rocks to apply touch-up paint. Now if we look behind us, we can see that the fence screen has been removed. Now we have a good view of the dam. If you look closely, you can see the water on the other side of the dam. Now we'll go to the front of Rivers of America and look at the dam from there. Alright, here we are, and I'll pan to the left and zoom in. Here we are on the top level of the Mark Twain riverboat. We can see that the fence screen has been removed from this side of the river as well. Well, that's a taste of things to come.
We can't wait to see what they build next.